are talking Predator, Killer of Killers, one of two Predator movies being released in 2025. This one being an animated anthology movie directed by Dan Trachtenberg. Actually is a movie that features Michael Biehn in the voice cast, probably the most recognisable of the voice cast actors here. And this is a kind of a movie which has three sort of separate stories and then a kind of like a fourth story at the end which sort of culminates all the three stories together. Now, the Predator franchise has had its ups and downs, it's probably fair to say. There's been lots of talk. I mean, I've been a big fan of since the original Predator, but there's always like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if the Predator was in like feudal Japan and things like this? And I think this movie is trying to address that because we have different time frames with different interactions between obviously warriors versus the Predator. So the story focuses over three time periods and then a finale, which I'm presuming takes place in the kind of the current day, one would assume. So our first story is a Viking story, and it primarily focuses on this kind of female shield maiden, and she's kind of wanting revenge over someone that killed her father. So we basically have that kind of backstory, and we see her taking revenge, and then ultimately the Predator turns up with, you know, to kind of claim this warrior and fight her. Then we have a kind of one set in feudal Japan where we have two brothers. One grows up to be a samurai, one grows up to be a ninja, and the ninja brother ends up trying to attack this samurai brother. The Predator kind of intervenes. And the third one is set in World War II, where we have a kind of rookie pilot ends up discovering that there's some type of other enemy, i.e. the Predator, in this kind of conflict, and ends up trying to fly a plane to warn his comrades, and then that's going to get mixed up in a kind of aerial combat. And then we have the finale, which ultimately suggests that the Predators are kind of having some type of carbon freeze or some type of cryogenic sleep for people who have kind of won against the Predator, and then they are taken somewhere and they have a kind of like another confrontation with like the King Predator or something. So that's kind of what I'll say about the story. I won't go into any more details than that. Let's talk about what I think works in this movie's favour. Now, I am going to say off the bat, I am not a huge fan of animation. I find it very hard to get into animated shows or movies and stuff like that. It's not really my sort of thing. I used to enjoy animation a lot when I was young, but as an adult I find myself getting very disconnected with animation, so I'm not a huge fan. So I am going to say that up front because I feel it's maybe you need to understand my context here. Now, this movie is in continuity with the series. I personally think this would have been better had it been not continuity and its own thing, and I'll explain why in maybe what I did not like about this. But what I did like is it's certainly an action-packed film. It is ultimately 4 segments, all of whom have lots of kind of conflict in it, and the conflict is treated relatively in an adult manner, i.e. there's lots of kind of relatively kind of grotesque violence and death and kind of death scenes and stuff like that. There's swearing in it, so it is not trying to be kiddified. It is trying to lean into more of the kind of the adult space here. So there's plenty of kind of violence and stuff. It does offer some variety. I will say the 3 sort of Predators in the kind of the anthology sections, all quite different. They look kind of different. I mean, one of the good things about the Yautja, which is the name of the species, and they do actually canonise that in this movie, is that they're like humans. They kind of look different, a lot unlike maybe the xenomorphs who kind of look the same. So yeah, we get a good variety of what they look like, and we even get, as I say, more of an aerial battle. in the kind of the World War II segment rather than a kind of a one-on-one, because obviously it's versus pilots. So this kind of Yautja is fighting in his spacecraft. So there's a little bit of a kind of variety in regards to some of the kind of the aesthetic sort of choices here. The art style, I think, is fairly good. I mean, again, for me, I had trouble kind of really connecting to cartoons, animated, but you know, the art style is very computer generated sort of style. But you know, I mean, it looks pretty good to me in regards to the stylistic choices. You know, it's like semi-realistic, I suppose, to a degree. You know, people look relatively in proportion, which is one of the things I sometimes struggle with. But yeah, the art style at least is somewhat kind of stylized and, you know, and fair, at least in my comparison. And I think it does try to expand the Predator mythos by introducing some elements, particularly in the fourth section, which is the kind of the culminative story elements, which I won't talk too much about because I don't want to spoil anything really, but there are some elements here that I feel do expand the Predator lore. Maybe contradict a bit of it, I have to say, but you know, whatever. We'll talk about that again in a minute. But yeah, it certainly it sort of fills out the world. We get a look at the Predator Homer. We maybe get a little bit of a look at Predator hierarchy, like an elder Predator and things like that. So I do feel there's some elements here that kind of expand upon the lore. I think the voice cast is all fairly good. And one thing I did appreciate is the sections that take place in the kind of the Viking era and the kind of feudal Japan era. They actually speak in their native languages for the most part. There's a bit of English in the Viking area bit, but they do speak in like a Nordic language as well. So I appreciated the fact that again it has that little bit of authenticity to a degree. So, you know, and again, it's an action-packed movie. If you just want to watch actions, fights, explosions, chaos on screen, this is a movie that will definitely appeal to you in that case. But let's talk about what I do not think works in this. Now, my kind of like somewhat apathy in regards to animation aside, I did not think the animation was great. The art style, you know, fairly good. I mean, I find it hard to connect with drawings and like blocky people and ones that don't look kind of anatomically correct. That's why I have a problem with that, with kind of animating and stuff like that. But you know, it's good enough. But the animation is very jerky, possibly a stylistic choice, but it almost looks like there's frames missing, so it has that sort of jerky kind of feel to it. So it always looks like animation, if that makes sense. You never really feel like, for me at least, I was particularly drawn in because of this kind of jerky style when you're obviously watching kind of live action. To me, again, it's just a disconnect feel. I did not think the animation was particularly good, but the art style was good. So there you go. So that's I think sometimes when people talk about animation, you know, you've got to have the distinct art style versus the animation. The other thing I have a problem with animation in general in regards to when they have adapted a live action property, and this is true like the Star Wars series, they're always like way over the top. The action is always like, and again, this is why I say this would have been better, I personally feel, if it had been its own continuity, because if it's in continuity with the live action stuff, you have to judge it by those standards in regards to that's what we have seen, that's the universe that we live in, and the rules that are set by the live action, we have to then transpose to the animation. And the kind of like the stunts, the action, they're always massively over the top in animation because it's that style where you don't have to worry about physics or stuntmen or things like that. So everything is particularly kind of like overzealous in regards to these massively over top action sequences where people are getting, you know, flung for like 30 feet in the air and kind of land. And for example, there's a scene where in the World War II section where our protagonist in that one, he's like he has an engine that's on fire on his plane, so he crawls out on, his plane's flying by itself and he crawls out on the wing of the plane to sort of disconnect this kind of bit that's on fire, and thinking, oh, it's like way over the top. You wouldn't be able to do that in live action because it will just look stupid. Because, you know, and again, you've got to think of the Predator in context of the live action things. So it was like relatively grounded. And again, what the things that happen in the animation are just kind of like over the top, too over the top, to really, for me, to mesh with the live action stuff, if that makes sense. I gotta be honest with you, I think at this point, the Predator is, you know, it's sold to us as this is the ultimate hunter. But goddamn, these dudes just keep losing. Every film we've had, the Predator ultimately loses. And I was expecting this movie to maybe buck that trend, but it really doesn't. And it's like, man, you know, it's just this. Whenever we see the Predator, they always end up losing, and we're meant to believe this is kind of like this ultimate Predator. And I guess, you know, they kill a lot of red shirts and everything, but ultimately they always come cropper of the of our normal protagonists, and it's kind of true of this movie to a degree. You know, so it's just like I thought this movie being an anthology we would have a little bit of. You know, sometimes the Predator might come out on top. It doesn't really happen. I also think, being an anthology, it would have been interesting to have a little bit more of a look at the actual Predator's point of view, and have a story which is from their point of view, which it doesn't do. I know the new movie, the live action one, that apparently is from the perspective, but obviously where Predator can't really have a conversation, a short might have been a better option for that. And again, it seems like a sort of wasted opportunity to me. I have to say, I mean, I'm no expert on Predator law. I've watched all the films, some of them multiple times, but to me it sort of contradicts a little bit about what we've seen and been set up in the kind of the live action stuff. I do think sometimes this is what's been established so far in the movies. And again, I'm not going to point out specifics because I don't want to spell too much about the plot. But yeah, for me, there were some elements here that I felt, well, that feels like Predators wouldn't do that. They're this race that have these certain rules, and I know that in the 2018 Predator movie, they tried to expand it a little bit. And this one does that further, but I feel like it's sort of at odds with which has been already sort of established to a degree. At least some things, not everything, but you know, there are still elements here that I would say do reflect that. But there are some smaller elements here that I just think are at somewhat odds with the franchise as a whole. And I've got to be honest with you, the three anthology films were kind of similar in story. It's basically, we see a human prove themselves in battle, end up kind of fighting the Predator, and they all kind of end up the same way. It's more or less the same plot with 3 times. And then we have the finale, which at least is a little bit different and actually adds a little bit more of a different story tack to it. But I thought the 3 sort of shorts leading up to it, plot-wise, I mean, they're pretty much the same, just a little bit of different window dressing, really. So, to me, you know, it's a entertaining movie. It's not a film I would watch again, but I would maybe watch a sequel. So let me put it like that. I mean, for what it is, it's an entertaining film, but I do think the movie is not especially special to me, I have to say. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.